Another week, another episode of Fear the Walking Dead. This newest episode was titled Blue Jay, and it focused on June, Dwight, and Sherry, three characters that I love. I just watched the episode early on AMC Plus. I'm about to discuss it, review it, give you guys my first reaction. This video will be spoiler filled. But before I do that, you should consider subscribing. If this is the first video of mine that you're watching, you should know that I'm a huge Walking Dead fanatic. I talk about the Walking Dead universe all the time on this channel. But I also do TV show discussions, trailer reactions, the occasional movie discussion, and I talk about survival horror video games. So just consider subscribing if that seems of interest to you. So we get to see June and where she's at in her life 7 years later after the events of season 7, and she's living on the outskirts of Padre, and she's taking out Padre guards and Padre kidnappers. She's not killing them, but she's knocking them out, and she's chopping off their fingers so they can't hurt anybody, which is super badass. And she's dressed up like Rambo, and she's just so cool looking. I really like June, and I think I'm gonna love her character arc this season specifically. And as the plot progresses, we learn that she did work for Padre, and then they forced her to do some horrible things. They forced her to experiment on people who were bitten in order to try and save them. Or actually, let me clarify. She worked on people who were bitten, and she genuinely tried to save them. And to my surprise and to my shock, because I believe this is the first time this has ever happened in the Walking Dead universe, is she actually found a way to stop the spread and stop the infection of a child that gotten bitten using radiation. She had a theory that Alicia last season was able to survive her bite and survive for so long afterwards, specifically because she was exposed to so much radiation over the course of seasons 5, 6, and 7. And I honestly really like this. One, I think it's really cool that for the first time ever, to my knowledge, we have a character who figured out how to stop the zombie spread, the infection spread. But more importantly, it adds this much needed weight to Alicia's character arc in season 7. I never disliked Alicia's character arc in season 7. I actually really liked it a lot. But knowing that what she was going through was the basis for what June is doing this season, and possibly being the first person to discover an actual cure, just adds, like I said, much needed weight to season 7. However, I am going to call slight bullshit if they claim that June is the first person to discover this, because using radiation to try and cure stuff seems very common, and it seems like anyone with resources would have tried this at some point already. The CRM, probably the Commonwealth, any community with a lot of resources and access to, radiology stuff, I feel like would have attempted and tried this. But as June tells us, she ended up stopping the spread, but the complications ended up making the child very sick and ended up dying. And then Shriek, this crazy lady that I hate, she forced June to keep doing experiments further and further until June eventually broke away and is now doing what she's doing when we meet her at the start of this. And then tied up in all of this is Dwight and Sherry. I was so happy to get a Dwight and Sherry episode this early in the season. I absolutely love those two characters. They're arguably my favorite couple in the Walking Dead universe, despite how dysfunctional they can be sometimes. I'm always rooting for them, and when we see them in this episode, I'm glad to see that they're still together. They still seem to be happy, and despite working and living with Padre for 7 years, they still seem to have their morals, which I was worried about, because Dwight and Sherry's arc, the entirety of season 6 and the entirety of season 7, was not becoming who they were under Negan, and I was worried that that arc was going to get thrown away this season, but it doesn't seem like it is, and I'm thankful for that. And we also learn that they have a kid named Finch, because everyone involved with Padre has a bird name, but they better name this kid John, because in season 6, the episode In Dreams, and Grace's dream episode, she saw Dwight and Sherry had a kid, and they named him John after, obviously, John Dory, and I really hope that they fulfill that in real life, because that would be super cool. And there was also this character named Adrian who was looking for his daughter. His daughter ended up being the person that June worked on and tried to save, and who ended up dying, and that was super sad. And Adrian dies this episode, but this one episode he was in, he was very likable. I was rooting for him. I was hoping that he would stick around for at least a few more episodes. And Fear the Walking Dead does a really good job at introducing characters for one episode, making you root for them, making you like them, and then killing them in the episode that they're introduced in. It's sad every time, but I like it. But my biggest takeaway this episode was June, and the fact that she found a way to actually stop the spread of this infection. The zombie infection, the main villain of the entire series, the infection. She found a way to stop it. And when this episode ends, Shrike, again, I forget her name, has a zombie head bite Dwight and Sherry's son. And first of all, wow, I can't believe they had the balls to do that. The whole time that it was happening, I thought she was going to stop, use it as a threat, or they'd find a way to stop her, but they follow through with it. And then they follow through cutting off June's finger. Another thing I didn't think they would actually do, so... Thank you, Season 8 so far for having stakes and balls and actually shocking and surprising me. But I'm so curious where this plot is going to go throughout the duration of this final season, and how this plot arc, if it does carry over to the rest of the universe, it must. Like, if June actually finds a way to stop the zombie infection spread, while simultaneously not killing the victim with radiation afterwards, it has to have greater, echoes and repercussions throughout the Walking Dead universe. And then this episode ends with a scene with Morgan and Madison being brought in a truck, and then Madison pretends to have, a breathing fit, and the truck stops, and then Madison attacks the guards and Morgan runs away. And I was kind of confused by this, because last episode Morgan worked for Padre. I'm not saying he was ride or die Padre. He didn't have Padre tattooed on his chest, but he seemed to be at peace working for Padre. He didn't want to be at odds with them because he thought that's what was best for Mo. So I'm surprised that this episode he so easily ran away, now making himself a full fugitive from Padre. It just seems very different from where he was last episode, and I don't remember there being an explanation for why he would change so drastically so quickly, unless he thought he was about to be executed, which, if that was said, I don't remember that being said. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. Anyway, there's my quick and brief thoughts on the newest episode of Fear the Walking Dead. I liked this episode a lot. I'm really, really enjoying this season so far. What did you think about the episode? Let me know in the comments. And yeah, once again, consider subscribing if you want to support a fellow fanatic of the Walking Dead universe. And thank you for watching, especially if you watched this far.